Blue Banisters by Lana Del Rey. It is 15 songs, an hour and 1 minute long. Second album of the year of Lana Del Rey, not produced by Jack Antonoff. More on that later. Um, this one I have looking at people reviewing it and stuff, and obviously I listened to it first, and then I was interested to hear what other people were thinking of it. A lot of people like this a lot more than Chemtrails over the Country Club. I could see why. It's a definite more like pivot back to her older sound, like her like early 2010 style of Lana Del Rey, even a little bit of what was her album that came out a few years ago, Norman fucking Rockwell, kind of more of that sound as well, slower down, really relying on her voice, more acoustic styles of production and stuff within it. And I think this is where, as much as I don't like Lana's music, I feel like it can get boring, and that's gonna be like my big criticism. I feel like, but this is where she shines within her own music. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I would largely agree with that. I in this position on this podcast, there's a lot of times I'm listening and reviewing to music that after the podcast is recorded, I'm most likely not going to seek out and try to listen to
Yeah,
more of, right? That being said, because of this position as like a sort of music critic, right? Um,
even
I can appreciate when an album just like sounds good. Yeah, even an album. I can appreciate I can appreciate when something has musical quality to it.
100%. Yeah,
And this album, while I think especially the latter parts of it drag on too much, you get a
yeah,
lot of musical talent from Lana Del Rey. It's at certain points where
yes,
like there's Lord was another artist who has an entirely different background leading up to this, but released a very stripped down kind of back to basics, a lot of piano, slow singing, really letting the vocals shine, traditional singer songwriter album. That one was produced by Jack Antonoff as well. More on that later. But I think
and
I
really
think
like it.
I think in the idea of trying to do the slow song kind of thing here, where you're stripping it down back to basics, but still doing like a pretty good thing, I like Blue Banisters more than Solar Power.
100%, not even close, because this is where Lana Del Rey, like this is where she makes her money, right? This is the slow down songs, a lot about in your feelings and saying some random shit that doesn't make sense, but there's gonna be a lot of people that are like, oh my god, and bow down and like this is biblical and stuff.
Lana,
I don't.
please tell
Okay,
me
so
more
side
about
note,
your
what's
crypto boyfriend, Kevin.
that's way too real. What's worse, Death Grips fans or Lana Del Rey fans?
Woo! Sean,
That's a question.
Sean. That's a question. We need to title a video that separately because that's way too much for conversation. I'm gonna write
That's
that
a lot
down.
of sauce. Even though I love Death Grips, but goddamn, their fans are
It's
fucking wild.
way too much sauce, dude. Like, I am
Because
not. Go ahead and make your point. I'm not going to answer that question. Let's assume it's rhetorical until we actually answer
It
it.
is. It is because my thing is because again I looked at reviews because I was very interested because I actually genuinely thought this album was good. I think out of all the ones that we've reviewed on Audioface, this is my favorite that she's produced and made. Because I didn't like Norman fucking Rockwell that much. I thought it was really boring, and also I got upset because the stupid video of her doing the Sublime cover and saying LBC walking around in Venice. I can't forgive you for that ever. But then with Kim Trails over the Country Club, I thought a lot of it was just really lackluster and didn't have a lot of emotion and feeling. And Lana Del Rey is known for emotion and feeling. That's her whole thing. In this catalog, you get all of that plus like a little bit more on the creative side of the song, like creative side of songwriting. It gets really long towards the end because every song is like over 4 minutes, just about. Um, and it can be a lot to listen to towards the end. Like if you cut it a few songs, like 3-4 songs earlier, then it's would be a lot better of a record. But anyways, a lot of the fans they're just crazy, and they're like that. They like to
Yeah,
say that this
and
is like the next coming of Christ or something whenever she releases something. But I'll give
I'll
her
also
credit for this one. I
before
actually
we
think it's good.
yeah, before we get into the album, because this is also like an audio face criticism that, oh, you're focusing a lot on the artist and the artist like character and what they're doing, and that's coloring your review. And maybe that can bleed in sometimes as well. But Lana Del Rey in the lead up to this essentially deleted her social media, wasn't really engaging with that, was really focusing on the music. And you can get some subtle swipes here and there at like media criticism and things like that. But it doesn't too much, even for me, get in the way of the record, the musical production on its own way. And that's what I
This is
appreciate. And that's what I really
yeah,
like. I think that's an
exactly.
improvement in our
Because
own direction. Just like
exactly.
it's not, I don't want to confuse that with a like a shut up and dribble, like you're only a musician,
No,
only
no,
focus
no.
on music. But there's a counterbalance. So sometimes you're being way too preachy. Remember that you're a musician, or like you're
And
being
that
way too preachy.
distracts from her art.
Exactly. This is not the case here in Blue Banisters, though. But I did want to get that out of the way here because the rest of this review is going to be all very much into the music because that's what Lana Del Rey gave us, and I think that's a credit to her.
Exactly. So going in, because that was kind of a long thing, but I think we needed to say that in general. Um, just because we does this. Starts off pretty slow with Textbook, and when I heard that opening track, I go, okay, this is going to be a Lana Del Rey record, because I already heard like the Arcadia. I think that was the single off of it. I'm like, okay, now that track makes sense just by listening to the opening like minute of Textbook. I go, okay, now I see what we're going to get into, and I thought it was a pretty good opening track. Like the first few things, like Textbook, Bannisters, Arcadia, I think actually are pretty three decent opening tracks for her. It gets you into it, like you'll get the feeling of it. You can kind of get into your mind of like picturing where you are when you listen to it, which I really like in albums when they do that. It's very cohesive, even like throughout the whole record, you still get that. Um, I really like the track. What's it after the interlude of Black Bathing Suit? I like that one because it kind of picks up a little bit where like the first couple of tracks are slower. That one kind of builds and builds. It reminds me of like Summertime Sadness style of Lana Del Rey, the early 2010s. But it's not necessarily a throwback to that sound. It's still like trying to do a little bit on the nose, a little bit stuff that's a little bit different, but it's still good.
Yeah, I think Black Bathing Suit's almost like the lead single off of the record.
Oh, is it?
I mean,
Okay. I know. I thought
not
we do
necessarily.
our okay, but we did Arcadia, I believe, correct?
And we might have. I mean, it depends on how you want to do it. I think as the record has come out, Black Bathing Suit's kind of like popped off a little bit, at least with Lana fans. But I mean,
Uh,
just stream wise, like there's later in the album Wildflower, Wildfire that has more.
Wildflower. That's good
The
too.
title track Blue Banisters, I agree with you, is also fairly solid as well. Um but yeah, I think the Lana really shines here in the first half of this record, maybe songs 1 through 9, where
Yes,
you're really getting a good idea of this version, this concept of where Lana Del Rey is paring herself back and deciding that okay, this is going to be the focus of the record. This is the sound I'm going to go for. It's something that's going to be a little more soft, a little more intimate, something that has not a. I think that highlights her vocals more as a singer, as a vocalist, because when she's sort of trying to emulate other personas or people, I think that kind of rubs off the wrong way because it doesn't seem genuine. But this seems very genuine, as you were saying, Sean, earlier.
exactly. Yeah, because that's my like a complaint I have of Lana is that where I could feel like a lot of stuff doesn't feel genuine or like the production can lag, but this doesn't do that. It really delivers on that and kind of shuts up some of our criticism of her last record. But I think a lot of that has to do with Jack Antonoff's production, where you have like two records that come out pretty close. You have Solar Power and Chemtrails of the Country Club, and they're both very lackluster indies ones where like we've heard that time and time again. Like you get that a lot in the indie scene and stuff. Not necessarily a bad thing, but when you have two amazing singer songwriters with Lord and Lana Del Rey, like you have so much there that you can do, and then you end up making them sound pretty similar, which is insane because they are very very different artists. Now you could see when he gets off of that, when you have different ideas, a little couple different people working with you, you could get a decent record from her. So um yeah,
That yeah
I think
that
it's
that being said, after song 9, I think that the like welcome is overworn, as it were, and so like it starts to kind of get
that's what it
kind
gets
of
long.
repetitive. I literally
Yes,
felt like on both of my listens, I felt that Wildflower, Wildfire, and Nectar of the Gods just sort of like blurred into one another, not in the way of like, oh, the songs work well next to each other and they transition nicely. It's just sort of like at that point in the album, I feel as though it needs some direction, some extra sort of a second wind, a second breath of fresh air some way, because otherwise it just starts to sound very bland and drawn out and just done repeatedly out again. And
Oh, for sure.
because of that, like the rest of the record to me, it lands, like it doesn't necessarily ruin it, but it takes like what could have been a really great opportunity for Lana Del Rey to either like cut her album short and just say like, these are the songs, these are the great songs, and now I'm going to drop the mic, or to finesse or workshop something out a little bit more to make that rest of the record really shine. Because I did not. This has been a weird month. I did not expect to come out like a Meek Mill fan, and or not a Meek Mill fan necessarily, but like coming around to Meek Mill, and a lot of other random reviews here that have ended in ways I wouldn't have expected coming into the podcast. But I really think Lana Del Rey could have sold me a lot better if that latter half of the album had a little more like punch to it, and
Yeah,
still
I
staying in
can
the
agree.
tone. Yeah, staying in the tone that it is, but it still needs something.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Where, as I said earlier, if you cut a couple of those tracks towards the end, I think you would have had a really good album overall. But it gets long, especially towards those latter half, where it can be a little samey, it can be a little lackluster in that regard, where it's too slow. But that's something that you get with her music a lot. So, but overall, it's definitely a step in the right direction after Chemtrails, and being so close together as well. They are quite different records too. So, I think it's decent effort.
Yeah. Arbitrary scale this week, because we do arbitrary scales every week on Audioface, because what we said in the review is what we said
It's
in the
one of my
review.
favorites.
Um, this is a wild arbitrary scale for a wild episode. Sean, take it away.
This is Ronaldo gut kicks, my guy. If you watch the Manchester United versus Liverpool Premier League match of El Football, it is beautiful because he got so butthurt that they were getting their ass kicked at Old Trafford, and Mo Salah has more goals than him at his own fucking stadium this year than he does. He like misses a kick, or a goalkeeper saves a kick. He goes over to a defender, and the defender's on the ground on the ball, and he just starts kicking the shit out of him. Somehow doesn't get a red card. I don't know how you don't get a red card for literally just like trying to like break into a dude's stomach with your right foot, but
Um,
it,
it's when you're paying good money to the refs, allegedly.
that ass.
But yeah, we're giving this numbers of kicks, right?
Yeah. How many Ronaldo kicks is this?
What did you give
And
it?
everything is subjective, so you can make 100 kicks, you can make 2 kicks. I don't give a shit. Do whatever you want. How many of our kicks? You could also add yellow cards, red cards to it, and like league suspensions and fines. Whatever you want, baby. Up to you.
I'm gonna give this. You know what? This is actually more enjoyable than I thought it would be. This is like in uh if you've ever been bullied or the bully, where you're like about to kick someone and you raise your leg up really quickly just so the victim or you flinch, but like you don't actually go for it and you do like a light tap. That's what this album felt like. That's like Ronaldo doing like, a little bit of head tickling with his foot. Just like a little like hey, this is a brush, this is a warning.
Yeah. Yeah. I can get that. For mine, it'll be he misses the ball and gets 2 gut punches to like the pelvis area.
Oh God.
And then like later on, they do video review of it and something, and he gets like a $3 million fine or something wild like that.